Greetings, YouTube friends. Today we're going to explore the upcoming total lunar eclipse, otherwise known as a blood moon, and the ongoing correlations with price patterns in Bitcoin. If you've been following the channel, you might remember my last two videos on the blood moon cycle and its potential impacts on the Bitcoin markets. In my first blood moon video, I explained how total lunar eclipses cluster together in cycles, and how these cycles have a 100% correlation to monthly downtrends. Here we are, 10 months after the first blood moon, and price is down roughly 52% off the all-time highs from 2025. If you haven't seen the first and second blood moon videos yet, I highly recommend checking them out. I'll put a link in the video description below. The first blood moon was March 14th of 2025. The second blood moon was September 7th of 2025. And the third and final blood moon is incoming on March 3rd of 2026. In this video today, we're going to focus on price patterns in Bitcoin associated with the third and final blood moon in this cycle. All right, let's look at some charts. Okay, so this is the Bitcoin weekly chart, and I have dropped the vertical lines and labeled them for the blood moons correspondingly with the first, second, and third in each of 4 cycles. The second cycle that happened in 2014 and 2015 actually had 4 blood moons in that cycle. And so we'll take a look at that as well. But we're just going to walk through the price patterns associated with the third and final blood moon, because each blood moon in the cycle has a historical pattern that so far has played out with precision. If you want to check out the previous videos that I've made about this cycle, each one has been fantastically accurate. First, what we'll take a look at, though, is the observation that I made in March of last year, which is that all of these blood moon cycles have correlated with monthly downtrends in the Bitcoin market. And what I will say is that this current drop is down 52% off the all-time high, but we have not formed a monthly downtrend. We have formed a weekly downtrend, but we have not formed a monthly downtrend. So that's notable. The other thing is that all of these third and then in this case with the fourth blood moon, have all correlated with major 4-year cycle lows. And the historical pattern of these 4-year cycle lows is that they typically see about 12 months or a year down in these bear markets. And so what's interesting is that we have not formed that monthly downtrend yet, and we have come straight off the top. And we are about to hit our third and final blood moon in the cycle in March. So that is notable. So we do have a few differences that are shaping up in this cycle compared to prior cycles. We are, however, in the time band for a 45-month cycle low. And if we go ahead and I track 45-month cycles, which is a little bit different than, it's pretty much the same thing as a 4-year cycle. It's just a little bit more precise. And so the 45-month cycle that I am calculating, I have a low due August of 2026. But when you're dealing with a 45-month cycle, I usually use about 1/6 of the orb or the time cycle, which creates about a 7-month window of time. So we are inside the time band for that 45-month cycle low. And if I just cut to the chase before we even look at the daily patterns, because that's what we're going to do next, is we're going to take a look at the daily patterns and what we might see actually around the blood moon itself. But if we're looking at the broader time cycle patterns, in the past, these third and final blood moons, or in the case of the 4 series, the third and fourth blood moons, have correlated with these major 45-month cycle lows. And so it's interesting to me that we are in this time band here. We are approaching the third and final blood moon in this cycle. However, I do have some extended analysis that I'm not actually going to go in depth with right now. But my planetary cycle work suggests that we're going to see a pretty choppy year, and potentially the whole year, but at the very least through September. So we may retest that low. We haven't hit the blood moon yet. So it is entirely possible that we make another fresh low. I won't rule that out just yet. Price action has been incredibly weak. But let's zoom in now and take a look at the historical patterns on the daily chart correlated to these third and final blood moons. All right, so here is the third and final blood moon in the cycle that ran from 2021 to 2022. And this blood moon, actually, this one is pretty incredible. It took place within just one day, actually, of the all-time low there in November of 2022. And so that is going to be the tightest, what I call orb or time band, in which the blood moon identified the low of the 45-month cycle. It was literally within one day. But if we take a look further, because some of you may be traders that trade swing trades or even intraday trades, and each one of the blood moons has produced a pattern that is repeatable. And the pattern that's associated on the daily chart with the third blood moon is that we do tend to see a move down of anywhere between 11% and 26% into the blood moon. And so keeping in mind that typically we are in a daily and a weekly downtrend, and in the prior historical cycles, a monthly downtrend as well, we have actually moved down either, into the blood moon, but not every one of the historical cycles we are going to see this tight of an orbs. There's actually a historical pattern prior to the 2022 cycle of the lows coming here. Now this is the cycle that ran from 2018 to 2019. So in this cycle, we did get a down move of 11.9% roughly from the lower high into the blood moon. But the actual low of the 45-month cycle came in here on December 15th of 2018, which was 37 days before the blood moon. But notice that price continued in a very weak trading pattern until we hit the blood moon, and then it put in a weekly higher low, and that's when it took off. So that would be the 2019 pattern. Then if we cruise back to the 2014, 2015 pattern, this one, the third blood moon was not the final blood moon, but the low of that 45-month cycle did indeed come in just before the third blood moon, actually. So the low of that cycle came in 82 days, which is quite an orb, actually. 82 days before the third blood moon. But take note that there was also a down move. It wasn't into the blood moon, but it was from the blood moon after the blood moon. There was a down move of 20%. And that price action continued in a very weak manner until we cleared that fourth blood moon in that cycle. And then last but not least, I don't have all of the eclipses in the 2011 pattern, but I do have the final one. And again, take note that the final one came in, the low came in 17 days before the blood moon. So we do have a historical pattern in 3 out of the 4 cycles that the low of the cycle actually comes in before the blood moon. Now, there are a lot of other things at play. There are other planetary cycles at play, and additionally, there's liquidity cycles and price patterns and macroeconomic factors. So, I'm not necessarily confident that this will be the low of the 45-month cycle here. But I think it's important that we look at this because so far, each one of these patterns associated with the first and the second blood moon cycles, they've all played out. If you go back and check out the prior videos, you'll see that the daily patterns played out on each one. And so it definitely has my attention. I'm keeping an eye out for a potential low in Bitcoin. And I'm also keeping in my mind's eye that it's very likely that Bitcoin is going to trade in a choppy range through at least September of this year and maybe even into the end of the year. Okay, everybody. One last thing we're going to take a look at before we wrap up. I'm going to take a look at the Bitcoin natal chart, which is the astrology chart for Bitcoin, which is on the inner wheel. And then the outer wheel is the transit chart. So that's where the planets will be in the sky on the day of the blood moon. So a total solar eclipse, or a solar eclipse by definition, is going to be a full moon, which is going to be the moon opposite the sun. And so what is very notable to me is that we have what's called the part of fortune, which is a calculated point in astrology that is going to be in trine almost exactly with a 2-degree orb to the Bitcoin natal part of fortune. And in financial astrology, I find the part of fortune transits to be incredibly powerful. And it's also notable that the transit part of fortune is going to be conjunct the eclipsed moon over New York City, because I use New York City as my transit chart location. So this definitely has my attention here as a potential possibility that this could ignite a positive move in Bitcoin with that favorable aspect to the Bitcoin part of fortune. Additionally, it's also worth noting that we have transit Mercury almost exactly conjunct natal Bitcoin Uranus. And we also have the sun, which is opposite the moon here, within 7 degrees of natal Uranus. So this is just, Uranus brings a lot of unexpected energy. So sudden and unexpected moves, highly likely. We already saw that with the pattern of significant drops between 11 and 26% around the blood moon itself. And then I'll look for a low to come out of that, which will be, a little bit like maybe the phoenix rising out of the flames. That will at least get us a bounce going. All right, everybody. I hope you all have a great trading week. And remember to like and subscribe my video. If you're interested in more forecasts and more detailed educational pieces on financial astrology, you can join my Patreon or my Discord. I also do individualized financial astrology readings. So you can book those at my website, margoamala.com. All right, everybody. Talk soon.